Forget the All-Star celebration for a second, because something happened behind the scenes that has fans questioning whether this year's WNBA voting can actually be trusted. Caitlin Clark helped make history alongside Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell as Indiana Fever All-Star starters. But within hours, that achievement was completely overshadowed by a stunning revelation. Despite ranking among the league leaders in scoring and sitting second in assists, Clark was somehow voted the 11th best guard by her fellow players. Then another mystery surfaced. During the final days of fan voting, hundreds of thousands of votes suddenly appeared, completely changing the race for the top spot. Coincidence or something much bigger? Today we're breaking down every number, every vote, and every piece of evidence that's fueling one of the biggest controversies of the WNBA season. Because once you see the timeline, it's hard to ignore the questions people are asking. Do you think Caitlin Clark was robbed in the All-Star voting? Let me know in the comments below.
This is 100% rigged. Make no mistake about it. This is rigged. Paige Bueckers coming in first over Caitlin Clark in fan voting. Knock it off, man. Not just stop. Just stop. Just stop. This is nasty work. What y'all did. This is nasty work. 400,000 votes in 3 days for Paige Bueckers. Really? Really?
Before the controversy took over every headline, the Indiana Fever had actually accomplished something the franchise had never done before. Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell were all officially selected as All-Star starters, making history for the organization. Never before had the Fever placed 3 starters in the same All-Star game through the combined vote of fans, media, and players. It should have been a moment everyone was celebrating, a sign of just how dramatically this team has changed in such a short time. Instead, that milestone was almost instantly pushed into the background as fans began digging into the voting results. And once the complete breakdown became public, the conversation shifted from celebration to controversy almost overnight.
Kelsey at the control, scoop shot. Oh yeah! Clark, bullseye! Who's in here? Boston pulls. Knocks it out.
Caitlin Clark. Are we having fun yet?
Mitchell, 3-ball.
Kelsey Mitchell's selection might be the most overlooked part of this entire story, especially when you look at everything she endured before Caitlin Clark arrived in Indiana. Mitchell spent 6 seasons carrying the franchise through difficult years without ever starting an All-Star game or experiencing the playoffs. Then everything changed. Clark's arrival brought national attention, sold-out arenas, and a level of excitement the Fever hadn't seen in years. Now Mitchell is finally getting the recognition many believe she deserved all along. Whether you see that as coincidence or not, it's hard to ignore the impact one superstar can have on an entire organization. The fan voting tells an equally fascinating story. Paige Bueckers finished with just over 1.045 million votes, while Clark wasn't far behind at roughly 1.023 million, a difference of only about 22,000 votes despite more than 1 million ballots being cast. Those 2 guards finished comfortably ahead of everyone else, showing just how much attention they commanded throughout the voting process. But while fans were celebrating those numbers, another conversation was quietly gaining momentum. Fever guard Sophie Cunningham had recently suggested that opponents were deliberately targeting Clark on the court, and that comment would soon take on a whole new meaning once the voting breakdown became public.
It happens every single game to her, and the league and the refs do absolutely nothing about it.
It's been a minute since you got fined on this podcast.
I have, but then you see the videos of literally kneeing and cheap shotting C in the throat. If she did that to any of our teammates, we'd be pissed. But they're definitely targeting her, and the league and the refs do nothing to protect her.
That wasn't a rumor spreading across social media or an anonymous fan trying to stir up drama. It came directly from one of Clark's own teammates, making people wonder whether the way she's treated on the floor reflects a much larger pattern. What should have been a weekend celebrating Indiana's historic accomplishment quickly turned into an investigation once the detailed voting results were released. The deeper people looked into the fan, media, and player ballots, the more questions started piling up. The timeline only added to the mystery. In the last official fan voting update before the final results, Aaliyah Boston was leading all front-court players, while Clark comfortably held the top spot among guards. Meanwhile, Paige Bueckers was sitting down in 5th place, well outside the conversation for the number 1 position. Then, during the final 3 days before voting closed, everything changed. According to accounts tracking each voting update, Bueckers reportedly gained nearly 400,000 votes in that short stretch. Going from 5th place to overtaking the leaders in just 72 hours immediately caught the attention of fans, who began asking the same question. What exactly happened during those final days? And that's where this story becomes even more intriguing.
Y'all mean to tell me, from the last time the voting took place, that was public, Caitlin Clark was 2nd, Aaliyah Boston was 1st, Paige Bueckers was 5th. She was in 5th place. She jumped 400,000 votes in 3 days.
Think about what a swing of nearly 400,000 votes actually represents. That's not the kind of increase you normally see from a few fans remembering to vote before the deadline or a highlight clip catching fire online. A jump of that size would require an enormous amount of support pouring in over a very short period of time. Late surges happen in every fan vote, but this one stood out because of both its timing and its scale. One explanation that's been circulating centers around Paige Bueckers' connection to the University of Connecticut. UConn has one of the most passionate and well-organized fan communities in women's basketball, and many believe that network rallied together during the final days to boost her numbers. On the surface, that theory makes sense because UConn supporters have always shown up for their stars. But others argue there's a big difference between a loyal fan base making a strong push and a candidate climbing from 5th place to the top in just 3 days. Whether it was simply an extraordinary late rally or something more coordinated remains one of the biggest talking points surrounding this year's All-Star voting.
But y'all mean to tell me her popularity, her name is so hot that she jumped 400,000 votes in 3 days? WNBA voting scandal. This is rigged. It's clear as day. Paige Bueckers wasn't getting no more votes than Caitlin Clark. Knock it off. Stop it. In terms of fan voting, absolutely not. This is a rigged job by the WNBA. They just did not want Caitlin Clark to be a captain once again, and they want to make it look like other players are more popular than her. This is 100% rigged.
When the final voting totals were officially released, the race turned out to be much tighter than anyone expected. Paige Bueckers finished with just over 1.045 million fan votes, while Caitlin Clark ended with roughly 1.023 million, leaving only about 22,000 votes between them. Considering Bueckers had reportedly been well behind only days earlier, the dramatic finish immediately became one of the biggest storylines of the All-Star announcement. Was it simply an incredible last-minute surge from an energized fan base, or was it the result of an unusually coordinated push? Everyone is free to draw their own conclusions, but it's easy to understand why so many fans started asking questions. Even so, the fan vote alone isn't what turned this into a league-wide controversy. Fans have always organized campaigns for their favorite players, and unexpected swings can happen in public voting. The real shock came when the player ballots were revealed. That's where the biggest surprise of the entire process surfaced, and it's the part that's much harder to explain away.
Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it, man. And you know, this is what I'm saying. Caitlin is up against a lot. Rigged voting, a 400K voting swing in 3 days. The players claiming she's the 11th best guard. Y'all do realize there hasn't been a single player in the league that averaged 20 points and 8 assists for a month.
When the WNBA released the player voting results, one number immediately became the center of the entire conversation. According to the ballots submitted by fellow players, Caitlin Clark was ranked as only the 11th best guard in the league. Even more surprising, Paige Bueckers received the highest ranking among guards from the players themselves. Now compare that result with what has actually happened on the court this season. Clark is tied for 4th in the WNBA in scoring, averaging 21.2 points per game, while also ranking 2nd in assists at 8.2 per contest. Those aren't just impressive numbers. They place her among the most productive offensive players in the league and have her producing at a historic pace when points and assists are combined. That's why so many fans, analysts, and media members were caught off guard by the player rankings. The statistics point in one direction, while the ballots point in another. Whether you agree with the voting or not, it's a difference that's difficult to ignore. And as people dug even deeper into the results, they discovered Clark wasn't the only star whose ranking raised eyebrows.
Clark was voted the 11th best guard in the league by WNBA players. And also, which was disgusting, Kelsey Plum was voted as 12th. She's averaging nearly 25 a game. I mean, it's nasty what the WNBA players are doing. The player ranking right here, they got Caitlin Clark at 11. That is beyond disrespectful. These players are haters. 1,000%. They are haters. They are haters. That's what's going on right here. There's nothing more, nothing less. These players are jealous. They are envious. They are hating on Caitlin Clark. 1,000%. Make no mistake about it.
Clark wasn't the only player whose ranking sparked debate. Kelsey Plum, one of the league's most explosive scorers, was voted 12th among guards despite averaging nearly 24 points per game this season. Seeing two of the WNBA's most productive backcourt players placed outside the top 10 immediately raised more questions than answers. One surprising ranking can always be explained away, but when it happens to multiple elite players, people naturally begin looking for a bigger pattern. Then another important detail surfaced. Reports from ESPN revealed that only around 85 of the league's roughly 180 players actually submitted ballots for the All-Star vote. In other words, fewer than half of all WNBA players participated. There were even reports suggesting that some teams never received voting ballots at all, making the sample size far smaller than many fans initially assumed. That completely changes how these rankings should be viewed. Instead of representing the opinion of the entire league, the player vote reflects the choices of a relatively small group who completed the process. Yet once those results became public, many people treated them as though they represented a unanimous league-wide consensus. And when you look back through WNBA history, this isn't the first time a player vote has produced a result that left fans scratching their heads.
11th? You know, Caitlin Clark is carrying the highest points and assists combined averages in the history of the sport. And she ain't guarded like she's the 11th best guard. That sure as hell ain't true. The level of defensive attention she is accounted for or has sent her way is second to none. So I simply cannot buy that on merit she's 11th.
For longtime WNBA followers, this controversy probably feels familiar because player voting has produced some surprising results before. Back in her breakout 2023 season, Sabrina Ionescu was voted just the 19th best guard by her fellow players, despite already being widely recognized as one of the league's biggest stars. Candace Parker was once labeled the league's most overrated player while she was sidelined with an injury, and Kelsey Plum has also found herself consistently underrated in player voting over the years. When you line up those examples, it's easy to see why so many fans believe this isn't simply about one controversial ballot. Time after time, players who generate enormous attention, whether through record-breaking performances, national media coverage, or massive fan support, have ended up receiving surprisingly low rankings from their peers. That doesn't automatically prove there's a coordinated effort against any individual player, but it does raise legitimate questions about whether reputation, outside attention, or other factors sometimes influence these votes beyond what happens on the court. And once people started asking why this keeps happening, another theory quickly began dominating the conversation online.
There ain't some animosity for Caitlin Clark, or whatever word you want to use. And it trickles down to the Indiana Fever as well. Aaliyah Boston was 8th in the player rankings in the front court. Now, the Fever are supported by the fans, obviously. Where was Kelsey Mitchell was 7th in both. So every Indiana Fever player was significantly lower than how they were rated by the...
That brings us to the question everyone has been debating online. Why would a player putting up historic numbers receive a ranking like this? There isn't a confirmed answer, and it's important to separate facts from speculation. One theory making the rounds is that some veterans may feel frustrated watching a new generation of stars, particularly Caitlin Clark, arrive and instantly become the center of the league's attention, bringing record television ratings, sold-out arenas, and unprecedented media coverage. Whether that idea is true or not, there's no public evidence proving that's what influenced the ballots. What is documented, however, is the timing. The player rankings were released just days after Clark was struck in the throat during a loose ball play involving Alyssa Thomas, an incident the league later upgraded to a flagrant 2 after review. That sequence of events naturally fueled even more discussion among fans. First came a high-profile on-court incident, and shortly afterward came a player vote that placed one of the league's statistical leaders outside the top 10 at her position. Those are separate events, and there's no evidence that one caused the other. Still, because they happened so close together, many fans viewed them as part of a broader conversation about how Clark has been treated throughout her rookie season. Whether people agree with that perception or not, it's become one of the biggest talking points surrounding the league this year.
Caitlin Clark's popularity and the fact that she came into the league and has been talked about more than anybody else and given credit for, rightfully so, the explosion in the league has led to the pushback, blowback, and resentment more than anything else, rather than, what the right-wing folks will run with, like, she's straight and white, so she's hated. And I still believe that to be the case. You can't tell me with a straight face there's not something to it at this juncture. The Kelsey Plum aspect of it is interesting because she's also straight and white.
The numbers alone have already made this one of the most talked about stories of the season. But there's another layer that keeps fueling the debate. Many fans began asking who actually benefits from these results, and why several decisions this year seem to arrive at exactly the right moment. One change that immediately caught attention involved the All-Star game itself. Unlike previous years, the league did not allow the top vote-getters to serve as team captains and draft their own rosters. Instead, WNBA legends were selected to make the picks. By itself, that format change doesn't prove anything. It may simply have been part of the league's plans for this year's event. But because it happened during a season when Caitlin Clark was once again among the leading vote-getters, it quickly became another topic of discussion across social media. Even respected voices in sports journalism questioned the player voting results. Veteran columnist Christine Brennan described Clark's ranking as one of the most fascinating stories she had covered, saying the numbers simply didn't seem to match what had taken place on the court. When experienced reporters begin asking the same questions as fans, the conversation naturally grows much bigger. Supporters also pointed to what happens every time Clark steps onto the floor. Opposing teams consistently assign their top perimeter defender to her, trap her in pick-and-roll situations, blitz her beyond the three-point line, and build entire defensive game plans around slowing her down. That's the type of attention defenses normally reserve for a franchise-changing star, not someone supposedly ranked outside the league's top 10 guards. And that's why this debate refuses to disappear. Whether it's controversial foul calls, surprising player ballots, or questions surrounding league recognition, Clark continues to find herself at the center of discussions that stretch far beyond the final score. Yet despite everything that's happened, she's still producing at an elite level, helping Indiana climb the standings while putting together one of the most impressive statistical seasons in recent memory. Now all eyes turn to Chicago, where the fans will finally have the opportunity to celebrate the Fever Trio on one of the league's biggest stages. The ballots have already been counted, but the conversation is far from over. Do you think Caitlin Clark was treated fairly in this year's All-Star voting? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to Court Queens, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest WNBA news, analysis, and breaking stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.